It's Monday, the 6th of June, 2022. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, 5 stories to kick off the week in 5 minutes. Let's get into it. Story number 1, the Reserve Bank is set to lift interest rates by somewhere between 25 and 50 basis points when it meets tomorrow, but the big lenders are already moving on fixed rates.
Yes, over the past 10 days, Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank, Westpac and ANZ have all upped fixed rates for home loans for owner-occupiers and investors. It means no major bank is offering a fixed rate loan for any term under 3%, according to ratecity.com.au. While variable rates mostly move alongside the official cash rate set by the Reserve Bank, fixed-term rates rely more on financial markets. They've already moved big time. In fact, a year ago, the average Big Four bank 3-year fixed rate was well below the lowest standard variable rate, about 60 basis points below. Today, it's about 2.6% above, gone through the roof. It's already hitting the market, particularly Sydney and Melbourne, with the preliminary clearance rate for auctions in both those cities around the 60% level over the weekend.
All right, on to story number 2. And Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is in Indonesia to visit his counterpart there today. Meanwhile, the Foreign Minister in China is calling for a reset in relations with Australia.
That's right. The Prime Minister flew out yesterday afternoon. It's part of his efforts to secure Australia's allies in the region. He'll lead a high-level business delegation. Now, when asked about whether he'll attend the G20 meeting in Jakarta later in the year, given Russian President Vladimir Putin is likely to attend, Mr. Albanese said he probably would, but he'd be uncomfortable sitting with the Russian president. All this is happening as China's foreign minister urged both Beijing and Canberra to find common ground to resolve differences. He made the comments at the end of a 10 Pacific nation visit. Now, that visit hasn't been as successful as hoped, with many nations avoiding signing security pacts with China. As for the Australia-China relationship, there are promising signs. Those sanctions on $20 billion of Australian exports and the detention of 2 Australian citizens need to be resolved. Also, the fact that a Chinese J-19 fighter challenged an Australian maritime surveillance aircraft in international airspace over the South China Sea last week won't help the relationship.
No, I wouldn't think so. All right, story number 3. The federal government late last week put in its submission to the Fair Work Commission on minimum wages. Now, this is a big issue for business and a big issue for low-paid workers. What did it say, and just how important is that submission from the government?
Well, the Fair Work Commission is independent and the government submission is just one of many, but it's a pretty important one. Employment Minister Tony Burke said the submission contains a recommendation that real wages of Australia's low-paid workers do not go backwards. That means at least a 5.1% increase, because that's the inflation rate. Employers also submitted to the Fair Work Commission. The Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry said that severe labour shortages in tourism, recreation and hospitality are hampering businesses' ability to recover from the pandemic. So it recommends that any increase in minimum wage be delayed.
All right, story number 4. Big tech companies, including Atlassian, have been pretty quick to offer disgruntled Tesla staff jobs following a couple of emails from Elon Musk last week.
Yes, remember late last week we told you about Elon Musk, boss of Tesla, emailing staff saying they must be at their office a minimum of 40 hours a week, and if not, he'll assume they've resigned. Not exactly best practice personnel management. Or, as Atlassian co-founder Scott Farquhar tweeted, something out of the 1950s. Atlassian has the opposite view. Last year, they told staff they never have to come in to the office. And over the past couple of days, Atlassian has invited Tesla employees to consider a job with Atlassian. Elon Musk, of course, responded saying Farquhar's tweets illustrated why recessions serve a vital economic cleansing function. Rich boys and their toys, Michael.
And finally, Sean, story number 5. The humble puffer jacket has turned 100 years old. I didn't know 2 things about this. I didn't know it was that old, and I didn't know it was Australian.
Well, the guy who invented it, George Finch, did so ahead of a 1922 British Mount Everest expedition. He called it an eider-down jacket. According to the ABC, it was bright green, made from the skin of a hot air balloon and stuffed with eiderdown. It was a long way from the tweeds some of his fellow climbers were wearing, and Mr. Finch was somewhat sneered at. Well, he was at base camp. He wore it anyway and apparently had the last laugh because on Everest his companies were freezing, whereas he wasn't so bad. Why do I like this story so much? The bloke was from Orange, Michael, my hometown, and certainly not a town normally associated with fashionistas.
No, that is a great story. And that's it, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 6th of June, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't quite enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast Five by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.